There we go. We are recording. So good evening and thank you for joining us for the second round of webinar sessions that are taking place on the future of the Greenhill Centre in Manor Park. My name is Oliver Deed and I've been asked to act as the independent chair to facilitate the session this evening. Harriet, could I grab the second slide, please? Before we get started with the events for this evening, I'm just going to run through a couple of very quick pieces of housekeeping. The first is, as you probably would have heard, the meeting is being recorded and Newham Council will be uploading a recording of this session to the Co-Create platform afterwards. If you want to ask a question, you can do so in one of two ways. You can either raise your hand, which means that you'll be brought to my attention and I'll be able to bring you onto the virtual stage to ask your question of the panelists, or you can submit your question using the Q&A or chat function, which you'll also find in the bottom panel. We're going to be taking questions at the end of the presentation, and the presentation will last for around 25 to 30 minutes, after which we'll have about 30 minutes for questions. So onto the project team itself. The project's been brought forward by the Affordable Homes for Newham team, and this session has been organised to provide residents with the opportunity to view some initial ideas, sorry, not initial ideas, some actual ideas for the site and to ask questions of the project team. So I'm going to get everybody to introduce themselves, their role, their involvement in this particular project. And I'm going to kick off first and foremost. He's got his hand over the mute button or the unmute button as we speak. James Cross.
Hi, good evening. My name is James Cross. I'm a Senior Development Manager at Newham Council, part of the Affordable Homes for Newham team. Hi, good evening.
Next on my list is Harriet.
Good evening. I'm Harriet Mulcahy. I work at Howard Tompkins and I'm the project architect on this scheme.
Next is Kate.
Hi, I'm Kate Matthews from First Plan. We're the planning consultants for the team.
Next on my list is Laura.
Hello, I'm Laura Gaskell, also from Howard Tompkins Architects.
And last but not least, Mike.
Hi, Mike Luschak from Me Landscape Studio, Landscape Architect.
Brilliant, thank you very much indeed. So without any further ado, we'll get into proceedings and I'm going to hand back over to James Cross, who will kick off the presentation. James, you have the floor.
Thanks, Oliver. So thank you for attending this evening. This is the fourth consultation event we're holding on the Greenhill Centre. The proposals for new homes on Greenhill make up the 1,000 new homes commitment made by the Mayor of Newham to help ease the housing crisis in the borough. There are tens of thousands of people on the waiting list for new council homes, and we hope that this project and many others across the borough that we're working on will help alleviate the housing crisis in Newham. It really is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to build more generally affordable housing in the borough, and we hope you find this presentation of interest. We previously consulted with residents back in April and got some quite useful feedback around how we could improve the public realm and some of the landscaping areas. So this is the kind of feedback from that initial consultation session and as we progress to a planning application. I'd like to pass you over to, before I pass you over to Harriet, I'd just like to explain the wider team. So it's a Newham Council-led scheme, and I'm an employee of Newham Council. The architects are Howard Tompkins. Landscape studio is from ME Landscapes, and not present today are structural engineers, Graphic Structures, helping us with the design of the scheme, and mechanical engineers, Max Fordham. The scheme will be a low energy passive house design building. Max Fordham are helping us design that, and Potter Raper will be providing project management and cost consultancy advice through the project. I'm just going to pass you over to Harriet and Laura from Howard Tompkins. I'm going to take you through the design of the project.
Thanks, James. So as we've mentioned, Harriet and I are from Howard Tompkins Architects. We're an architecture practice based in North London. We work across many sectors, including the theatre and performance sector, education buildings, and also we have a lot of experience in residential buildings for both housing associations and private developers. This example here shows one of our projects for Peabody in West London. It's a brick building which knits itself into the surrounding context. It has a mixture of inset and projecting balconies, and it also ranges in height from 4 stories in some places up to 9 stories. And we think this is a really good example of a project we've delivered, and the type of architectural quality and brick detailing that we'll hope to bring to this scheme at the Greenhill Centre.
Hi, I'm just going to run you through the site and our proposals. I'm assuming the majority of you know this, but the site's located just south of Manor Park Underground Station, and there's also Wood Grange Park Overground Station to the west of the site, and also a number of bus stops along High Street North and Romford Road. The site today is, as James mentioned, got the existing Greenhill Centre on it, which has a number of functions, the gym, the boxing club, GP surgery, which James has explained that the GP surgery and the boxing club are being re-provided off-site. And then we are re-providing the gym within our proposal. The site's bounded by 3 quite different roads. So first we have High Street North, which has a number of locally listed and listed buildings on. And you can see when you do get to the Greenhill Centre, the existing building there, there's quite a lot of blank brick facade. So our proposal will be looking to reinstate something that contributes more to the high street. We've then got Church Road, so the road slopes around the corner, and it's bounded with the railway line. And you can see at the moment, again, the building doesn't add anything to the streetscape. There's quite a wide, large patch of unloved pavement and then a very blank facade. And again, our proposals will be looking to create an active frontage onto this road, and also landscape some of this pavement and add new trees, which Mike will explain in detail a little bit later in the proposal. And then finally, going around the corner again, we have Snowzilla Road, which is a quieter residential street, which has this row of 4-story masonettes on. And you'll see from our massing and our proposal that we've stepped down our massing to respond to the quieter residential nature of this road. So kind of opportunities for the site and the brief that we've been working towards with Newham Council. We're looking at around 80 homes. 90% of the homes are going to be dual aspect. 39% are going to be family homes, so 3-bed and above. And 100% affordable homes. So as James will explain in more detail, that's 70% London affordable rent and then 30% shared ownership. We're looking for a highly sustainable building with targeting passive house principles, and also BREEAM excellent for the gym. And as I mentioned before, we are re-providing the gym on site. So there's a number of factors to consider when we initially started looking at the site, and our proposals have taken all of these into account. So things such as the existing mature trees on site, which we are quite lovely large trees that we wanted to keep. The noise pollution from the high street and the railway, the existing neighbouring properties, and ensuring that our building isn't getting too close to them. And also we've marked on here the kind of existing vehicle entrances, and we'll just be keeping this one to the north to minimise traffic disruptions on Snowzilla Road. So this is then how we developed the design. As I mentioned, we wanted to keep all of the existing mature trees and use these to enhance the proposed landscape. The residential courtyard for the new residents in the centre of our scheme is then protected by the surrounding buildings. And then we've got active frontages from the gym and from residential at street level, which will improve the streetscape compared to the big blank facades of the current existing building. And we've got residential through cores. So when you walk past the building, you'll kind of glimpse into the landscape in the middle. The servicing and parking, as I mentioned, we're using the existing vehicle entrance to the north of the site to minimize disruption. And then the orientation, height and massing. We've been working hard to develop the scheme to have the lowest impact possible on surrounding neighbours, whilst also trying to create an enjoyable place to live for the new residents, especially with enough light into the communal garden. So I mentioned parking then, but the development will be car free, which is in accordance with council policy. And this means that new residents of the 80 new flats will be unable to apply for parking permits. However, there will be 3 accessible car spaces on site that will be used by the new residents. And parking permits will be reserved on street for existing residents in the area. So these are our finalised proposals following previous residential consultations, as James mentioned. We've got around 80 homes, a large number of family-sized homes, so 39% 3-bed properties, as I mentioned before, a communal garden in the centre, and then improved landscaping, not just in our site, but also kind of spreading to the surrounding areas, which Mike will go through in a little more detail. This is a zoom in of the ground floor plan. So a few things to note. There's the 3 main pedestrian entrances highlighted by these blue arrows. This is the entrance to the gym facility. And then the smaller arrows show where there'll be individual access to individual masonettes. So the masonettes on Snowzilla Road, for example, are kind of similar to the pattern of masonettes on this street. We also have the 3 accessible spaces that you can see to the north of the site. As part of the kind of car-free, we're going to be providing a lot of cycle storage for residents of this scheme. So there's a large proportion of cycle spaces provided. And then there'll be some additional cycle storage outside the gym for gym users. The green and blue locations just highlight where we have refuse stores and plant. And then the pink and yellow colours are, the yellow is the gym and the pink is the residential properties. These are some street views taken from our model. Our model is currently on display in Manor Park Library, so you can go and visit it yourselves if you'd like to. But this is a view of the approach on the way to the Manor Park Underground Station, crossing over the railway bridge. You can see our proposal with the gym sat between. And this is number 2 is kind of zooming around the corner, so the view from Salisbury Avenue. Number 3 shows you looking south down Snowzilla Road, so you can see how our massing steps down to kind of respond to the residential properties on Snowzilla Road. And then finally, you can then see our Church Road, the Church Road view, which has our block in relation to the railway and the wide bit of pavement, which we'll be planting new trees on and improving the public realm in that location. And then here are some elevations. So we said at the last consultation that we'd be developing these in more detail and showing you some of the brick detailing and detail that we've added to kind of respond to the local context. So we've been looking closely at the conservation areas, and they've got some quite nice tooth brick detailing around windows on some of the Victorian terraces in the conservation area. So we've been picking up some of those details and adding them into our scheme, but this top elevation shows kind of High Street North straight on. So you can see the gym sat in between and gates into our communal garden. And then this is kind of zooming around the corner to the Snowzilla Road elevation. So you can see here the individually accessed masonettes with the flats above and the car entrance for those 3 accessible spaces. I'm now going to pass you over to Mike, who's going to talk through the landscaping. Thank you.
Thanks, Harry. So the first slide is just about the existing Snowzilla passage, and we're looking to close the passage and make improvements to the existing passage that is just further to the north on the other side of the existing maisonettes. We're looking for entrance access for the existing maisonettes into the communal garden, so that there is access for the residents of those maisonettes. And we're also looking, as part of the improvements to the passageway to the north, of a play area, which is just to the side, to the western side of the existing maisonettes. And we've also been discussing with local groups in terms of how our landscape proposals for the site then dovetail with other works that are being carried out in terms of environmental improvements further to the north of our site. So that seems to be coming together. This is a plan showing the overall landscape. So on here you can see the communal garden, which the northern strip retains the existing 4 category B trees and provides additional planting as well as seating areas. So that has a more of a sort of natural focus in terms of native plants, meadow area, and additional tree planting. And then just to the north of that is the play area that we're developing, which is at the entrance to the passageway there. And there's a number of existing trees in this area, which we're obviously looking to retain as part of the works in that space. And then sort of working down through the communal garden, you can see there's some raised planter areas with fruit trees with grow your own planting provided so that residents can grow their own produce, etc. And then further to the south from there, we're looking at the play for the site. We've done child yield calculations based on the Mayor's London plan guidance and the planning guidance. And we're looking at providing play facilities for 0 to 11-year-olds with a range of facilities, including natural play elements and also play equipment, which is then in a contained space, which is safe and easy to use. And there's access from the main blocks into that space so that it's easy to sort of use the facilities within the communal garden. And we've sort of split the character of it so that there are different characters within that space. And then further to the south, as Harriet mentioned, we're looking at developing a series of landscape areas along Church Road. So we've kept the existing tree and then provided planting around that and looking at seating areas, different types of planting, and where achievable, providing additional tree planting as well, so that we almost provide a linear park along Church Road, which then connects further to the southeast. And there's an existing grassed area to the other side of Snowzilla Road, which we're looking to diversify by having tree planting, possibly a seating area, and also some raised planter areas there as well, so that it becomes a community space that can be used. And then we have defensible planting to the edges of the building where it meets the existing footpath, so that ground floor residents have some separation from the sort of general footpath areas around the site. And the images on both sides are just really sort of showing some of the characters of that. So On the right hand side, you can see the sort of types of play opportunities for younger children. So more imaginative play using natural materials and incorporating planting into that, so that it has sort of sensory planting ideas. And then an image of sort of active and passive grow your own planters, so planting some initial herbs and fruit trees within that space, and then allowing residents to use those raised planters as they see fit. An image of defensible planting showing the use of railings here, and then with hedge type planting, so that it defines the boundaries and gives some separation, but also provides some sort of greening as well to those spaces. And then on the left hand side, just sort of showing some of those ecological enhancements. So providing a sort of, again, in terms of the ecological value of the site by creating a range of habitats, and also providing nesting habitat for birds, bird boxes, and also bat boxes as well, which would be fixed to existing trees. And then also providing communal seating areas as well, so that there are spaces for people to use in different ways. So there are quiet, more passive spaces, then more active spaces for parents and carers related to play facilities. And then just some additional images showing the types of play, again, with a sort of range of characters to that, and then also biodiversity ideas. So we have quite extensive green roofs as well on the buildings, so trying to diversify and provide ecological habitats for different species on different roof planes. So we then start to get the landscape sort of rising up from the ground plane up onto the building massing and onto the roof scape of the buildings. And I think that's it. So I'll just hand over to James to finish.
Thanks, Mike. So this next slide just sort of summarises some of the key benefits of the proposals and summarises some of the other points of the presentation. So we're looking at delivering around 80 new homes, and there'll be a sort of 70-30% split between London affordable rent properties and homes for shared ownership. All in planning terms and in financial terms are seen as 100% affordable. We're looking at a high proportion of family homes. So out of those homes that are available for rent to people on the housing list, 39% of those will be family homes. That's 3-bedroom size, to help meet the number of overcrowded families on the council's waiting list. As Laura and Harriet explained, we're looking at improving the positive addition to the high street, improving that corner there just at the frontage of the gym at the moment. And as we've made clear throughout the presentation and previous consultations, that we're looking at building what we call a low energy design to passive house principles or to passive house certification, which is in response to Newham Council's response to the climate emergency, and also responding to concerns around fuel poverty affecting Newham residents. As Mike clearly outlined, we're looking at some quite significant improved green spaces from the Snowzilla passage all the way down to the kind of corner front there outside the existing nursery on Snowzilla Road, and an improved communal garden and small play area in the centre of the scheme and by Snowzilla passage as well. The scheme will be a car-free development, which means that any new tenants who move in will be advised they cannot apply for a permit. There will be 3 wheelchair parking bays for users of the adapted properties, and we'll be making sure that residents don't begin parking on the site when they move in. As part of the procurement of a contractor, we'll be looking at ensuring that there are apprenticeships for local Newham residents and as many jobs for people in the local area as possible, and that will be embedded in our procurement approaches. And lastly, just in response to the scheme being a car-free development, we'll be promoting sustainable travel, and there'll be significant bike stalls for both residents and visitors and users of the gym on site, which will be secure as well. Next slide, please, Oliver. So just in terms of a timeline, so we're just finalising our consultation process at the moment. We'll have this presentation and surveys up on our Newham Co-Create platform until mid-June, and the model that you've seen in the presentation here will also be available at Manor Park Library until that point. In around the end of June, we'll be submitting a planning application, and local residents who've been invited to these presentations will be contacted separately by Newham Council's planning department and invited to partake in the statutory consultation on that planning process. We hope to receive a decision on that planning application in early autumn 2021. The scheme will be held at Newham's Planning Committee. And if planning is successful, we'll be undertaking a competitive procurement exercise throughout the autumn with a look to start on site in early 2022. We're currently working with Active Newham and other stakeholders at the council to look at exactly when the schemes will complete in terms of when the gym will be available for final fit out, and try to minimise the time at which the gym is closed to residents in the locality. Hopefully we can open the gym or get work on the gym internals before the social housing is completed, just to minimise that disruption to local residents. Thanks very much.
Lovely, thank you, James. And as you can see on your screen, please feel free to submit questions or raise your hand if you'd like to come on and ask one. James, I'm going to come straight into it. You alluded to this just now, but Councillor Darwood has asked, how will this development affect Manor Park Gym? This is something that lots of residents have asked about. So why don't you go through the steps of the process with the gym and spell it out clearly what's going to happen?
Sure. So we've been working with the council's leisure department and Active Newham over the last few months on this project and other projects all around Newham, looking at a wider housing and leisure strategy. It's excellent that I think we're able to re-provide the gym on site. That's not always been part of the brief. It's something that we have decided as the project's developed, that we will be providing similar square meterage of new gym on site. And we are trying to work to ensure that that period at which the gym is closed to when it reopens again is minimised as much as possible. We will unfortunately be looking at closing the gym in the autumn because we do need to carry out some essential surveys to the site before we actually get planning, once we get planning permission and before we can actually demolish. So we're looking at closing the gym in the autumn, and I believe all the gym members have been written to thus far. And then once we get a contractor on board, we'll have an idea of exactly when the gym will be open for final fit out by Active Newham or by the council's leisure team to hopefully reopen it as soon as possible. Obviously, there's things like the fire systems, heating and hot water and electricity to the building, which needs to be coordinated with the residential block as well. So once we get a contractor on board, we'll be pushing for the gym to be completed as quickly as possible, but it is subject to those connections.
And will the re-provision be, similar to that that's existing at the moment? And I will come to, and in fact, Councillor Darwood has come back and said, how long will the gym be closed for, and where else can residents go nearby? So there's 3 questions there. Is the re-provision the same as the existing? How long will it be closed for? And where can residents go nearby when the gym is closed?
Sure. We are looking at similar square meterage. So in terms of the size of the space that's re-provided, it will be of similar size. Obviously, it's going to be a modern air-conditioned building, which will also be built to BREEAM design standard excellent as well. So we'll have excellent sustainability and energy credentials as well. There is an FAQ on the Active Newham website, and my understanding is from speaking to colleagues at Active Newham and the council's leisure team that anyone with a membership to Active Newham at Manor Park, that will be transferable to to other gyms.
And is there a space? And is there a space that is equidistant to where the Manor Park gym is for residents to go whilst this one's closed?
I can't confirm that at the moment. I can certainly get that fed into into the FAQ. I don't believe that there's been a look at resourcing for a replacement in the local area, simply just because of the cost of doing that on a temporary basis. So residents will, users of the existing gym will have to use other gyms in the vicinity.
I presume, James, this is something you'll be happy to pick up with Councillor Darwood after this as well.
Yes, certainly. That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. We don't have any more questions in the chat at the moment, so I'm just going to ask a couple around. You mentioned shared ownership units in your presentation. What does shared ownership mean, and who are those sorts of units actually targeted at?
Sure, excellent. Okay, so I mean, the shared ownership is a kind of housing product there to help people on low incomes or people just getting on the housing ladder. So it's a way of ensuring that people of Newham can benefit from increased house prices and that those benefits of home ownership and stability. So they can buy a small share of their property, and then that share can increase over time. And it creates quite an interesting solution to private renting for a lot of residents who could not get on the housing market with a significant deposit. So the schemes will be built to a good standard, which will match sort of what's out in the market at the moment. For example, will include white goods, good quality furnishings, and ensuite bathrooms in some of the larger properties.
And then on something a bit different, how do you go about deciding on contractors, and how are you going to ensure that those contractors that undertake work, if this gets planning permission, do the work in a way that is thoughtful for the neighbours and causes the least amount of disruption?
Okay, excellent. So the procurement process takes around sort of 4 to 5 months. It is quite a significantly lengthy process, which involves going out to a framework of contractors where they're given the designs and they're asked to come back and obviously price those designs, but also come back to us and answer numerous questions around how they'll add quality to the project. So that's including sort of how they've worked on tight sites like this, how they deal with residents, what they provide in terms of community engagement, and also what they provide in terms of social value. Newham Council has commitment to community wealth building, and we'll be looking for contractors that offer the best apprenticeship schemes, offer the best liaison with schools and local businesses and such like that, to try and keep the benefits of the construction in the local area and in the circular economy. On the second part of the question, we also like to make sure that we tend to issue a draft construction management plan with the procurement documents. So that's to make sure that the contractors will adhere to certain constraints around deliveries, lorries access on site, and make sure that they are members of the Considerate Construction organisation as well, which is a sort of points-based assessment of how our contractors both provide facilities for their workers on site, but also how that they work with the local community and keep noise and disruption to a minimum throughout the build process.
Right, I've got one more question. So this is a last call for questions or hands up before we close the session. So my last question is, what's the next stage in the consultation process, and how are you going to keep residents updated on it?
Okay, so this is the final consultation event in this format. We'll be putting the videos of this event on the Newham Co-Create website, and residents have been written to with my contact phone number if they can't access the internet and want to request this, or the presentation as an information pack. We can post it out to them. The model of the scheme will be in Manor Park Library until mid-June, and there'll be surveys that can be completed on paper and given back to the staff there. The next stage in the consultation will be the formal statutory consultation, which will be led by planning officers at London Borough of Newham. Those little kind of yellow laminated A4 signs you might see in lampposts will be circulated around the area, and a similar circumference of residents contacted about these events will be written to comment on the planning application on the planning portal, and with an opportunity to attend the Council's planning committee meetings later on in September.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap up the session in that case, because we don't have any other questions or anything.
There was one more question.
Oh, hang on, sorry, it's just come in. Yeah, okay. As a leaseholder in Snowzilla Road overlooking the site, I wonder how long the build will take and how the roads might be disrupted. Let's answer that one first, James.
Okay, so obviously the contractor will be in charge of the programme, but we are looking at a kind of 24-month build process, maybe a little bit less. In terms of how the roads may be disrupted, that's what will be forthcoming in the construction management plan. There may be periods where there are some temporary closures, and the council has to apply for the statutory planning routes through the council's highway department to do that.
And then, do you want me to move on to the next question? Is that the end of the answer to the first one? Because the second element to this is, furthermore, there has been a developer trying to buy out leaseholders in the T-shaped block. I'm assuming you're aware of that, across the passage tree line. Have you considered increasing the site and redeveloping the current houses.
Okay. Are you referring to the block? There's the block adjacent of Masonettes by Snowzilla Passage, and we're building the red line up to that.
I'll tell you what, James is on is there. If he's not going to get a bit stage shy, I'm happy to allow him to talk and to elaborate on that question. So James, give me a shout or let me know in the chat if you don't want to, but I'm going to allow you to talk. So you're welcome, James, if you are happy to talk, so just elaborate on that one.
Mm-hmm.
You are able to talk.
Yeah,
can you hear
me?
Can hear you. You're loud and clear. Please elaborate.
Yeah, it's a bit of an awkward one, and clearly I have my own agenda here, which I won't hide. So yeah, I am literally, if I look out of my front room window, I'm in one of the Masonettes, the T-shaped block, and the passage that you talk of with a tree line, that is immediately next to my house. So I'm not in the long block, but yeah, for me, obviously, I'm concerned about disruption, but also, yeah, there has been a developer that has approached all the leaseholders here that is looking to essentially knock down what we've got and build on it. But for me personally, that suits me because this block of houses is not in a good shape. It's it leaks. There's many problems. So I love the idea of a white knight coming in, buying out our leases. But it seems to me that you guys, as the developer I'm thinking of is obviously a private company that has done developments with you guys before. But yeah, I'm wondering if you've considered that, or if that's just this third party that's looking at that, and there's kind of two. I feel like there's the council's plans for Greenhill, and then there's also a third party kind of looking in, trying to make it into a bigger site. And I'm wondering if you've considered that, or you're just, it sounds to me that you're not considering affecting any of the block I'm talking about.
All right, James, we'll put that to your namesake, and if your namesake can't answer, I'm sure he'll follow up with you afterwards. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not actually aware of any interest into those properties, which obviously I believe the council does own the freehold too. So any inquiries around development would come through the council's legal team and the colleagues I deal with quite regularly in terms of working in the development arm of the council. So that's something I can't really comment on at the moment, either because it is something I'm not actually aware of. Certainly, one of the key features of the 1,000 New Home programme that we're developing in Newham is that we're picking sites where we own the land already. It's very difficult for us in terms of viability, making schemes cost effective, if we're buying out and effectively buying land and then building on top of it and then renting those homes at a affordable or social rent level. The figures don't always stack up. So that's primarily why the red line is focused around the existing site that we own and can control the leases on. I think if we were buying out that row of Masonettes around Snowzilla Passage, that would actually probably greater impact on what we could deliver. Bearing in mind we're still going to be looking at maybe creating another 10 homes on that little area, something like that. So it's all very high level the way I'm responding to this, but that's the kind of principles I'm looking at really at the moment as to why we wouldn't expand that further. So I'm happy to if you've got any further details of the developer that's approached you. I think it may be interesting that the council's property team is made aware of that, because as I said, as part of our sort of due diligence on the development, we're not aware of any of those intentions as yet.
James, Mr. Cross, rather than the other James, it's probably worth you guys, perhaps you drop James in the chat your email address or the project email address, so you can pick this one up afterwards and have the conversation. So otherwise, I suspect we're going to get into the minutiae of an acquisition for a site that's not really the subject of this evening. So unless there are any other questions that are forthcoming in the chat, I'll give it 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, okay. Well, there are no other questions. So I think we'll call the session to a conclusion for this evening. Thank you very much to the panelists for joining us, as well as all of the attendees. And as you can see on your screen, there are mechanisms to provide feedback on what you've seen this evening, and a contact number which will get you through to a member of the project team as well. So enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.